between 2 and 3,000 people. We were told the highest per capita representation. Vermont was on a big wave, a big high for leading the nation and voting from the 50s and the 90s. What would you call it? Our most special poster was Lynn Severance before she went on to fame and glory with Ben and Jerry's. Very first poster, not very glorious, but nuclear issues were important in the late 70s. We would say that's the fault of the nuclear stuff and energy sector of America. Nuclear issues were very important in the decade. Whether it was weapons systems or photography. So the kind of decade is Hiroshima.
What do you do? You want to do all the real estate?
And you know, in the way these two quarters go with the nuclear power reactors, and I don't think it's that terrible. The peace coalition was coming out of the movement that was good with alternative energy and nuclear power, and our pleasure and organization as a rule on you can do a job registration and Cambodia. And this was like 1982. Now, I don't know what we do about this as under 86, so maybe this is 1983 because a few more towns voted on this.
When we do the women's international league for peace and freedom,
They decided to spend more money than we've ever spent.
well, we needed help.
Well, the thing is that was the thing that we were actually doing labor. Over this time, they played airport, that one and that one and this B-44 all had lights on all Huntington Airport. So I would say that in the mid-80s we could talk about that grouping.
Okay, so which now we how are we dividing these up in?
Maybe we shouldn't do redirection until after we do the dot chart, until we get in. Want to talk about that? Dot chart. One dot represents mega tonnage, all mega tonnage in World War II, including Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs. This is the mega tonnage that the United States and Soviet Union had together in the 80s. And this one represents the tribe of submarine issue, see what the subtle we're running.
Okay, so what should you want to do? here to introduce you to a show that's at City Hall in Burlington, 10 Years of Social Change. These are posters from the peace and justice movement in Burlington and the greater Burlington area. And you'll see right here on either side of the list of the artists that contributed their talents to create the posters for this whole show. A poster that commemorates our 10th birthday party that took place in January of this year, and that was made by Quad Left and Bonnie Acker. And on this side, a poster for the event that just took place, Building Ecological Security, also made by Quad Left and Bonnie Acker. So these two, in a sense, commemorate the 10 years of activity of the Burlington Peace Coalition. Above are others.
In 1981,
Hold it.
a special poster. In 1981, Pete Seeger came to Vermont to do a benefit concert that raised over $20,000. He hadn't been to Vermont in 20 years. And all he took was $50 for gas money. Half the money went to benefit the Nicaraguan Literacy Crusade film, Dawn of the People. The other half of the money was dispersed among 5 groups. The Burlington Peace Coalition received $800. At that time, it seemed like a lot of money. Lynn Severance was the artist for this poster, and this was about the time that she was still doing free work before she went on to fame and glory, being the artist for Ben & Jerry's ice cream. Up above, the 2 picket posters were by Frank Teagle of Woodstock, Vermont, who very generously donated his time and the cost of the posters. In 1982, he made 177 town signs. They are reversible. He hand-lettered in all the towns in red, and Vermont was very visible amongst a million people in New York City. There were between 2,000 and 3,000 Vermonters went down to New York City, and we were told that we had the highest per capita representation there. On the right, we have the poster that commemorates the 20th anniversary of Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. Though fewer Vermonters went down, Vermont was still very visible because we had many of these signs that declare Vermont still has a dream.
All are posters from the time before the Burlington Peace Coalition got started. Vermont Vietnam was a very active group here in the Burlington area, and the poster, the colored poster up there with the Vietnamese people, I think is a wonderful example of silkscreen poster made by a group of people, Roz Payne, Dan Higgins, and John Douglas. To my mind, it represents sort of the best of the 60s style of poster making. The other poster, the Vermont People's Park, is a kind of unique photo montage that was also made around the same time. The one in the middle is about the Christina Berster case that happened in 1978. That was a case that focused around a German woman who came across the border illegally and was charged with being a terrorist. It was quite a dynamic event in Burlington. William Kunstler came up to be her lawyer, and a defense committee formed that created several nice posters.
On the lower level, I'd like to point out these 2 posters from the mid-70s. This poster, as today people are protesting urban renewal, this is when the Radisson Hotel was being built. And this poster is by a group called People Acting for Change Together, PAC. And on the bottom here, you will see that one of the people you can call for information is Jean. This is Jean Bergman, who used to stand outside of City Hall ranting and raving and protesting. And now Jean has been an alderman for the past 3 years. He's inside City Hall. It represents the Burlington Peace Coalition's very first poster. It's just a line drawing, but it got the message out. This event happened to take place on the same weekend that 3 Mile Island melted down. We were a little bit overshadowed, but we still had a very good turnout. In the late 70s, the peace movement was coming out of the anti-nuclear power movement. This poster was done by the Vermont Yankee Decommissioning Alliance. This photograph was very generously contributed by Lottie Jacoby, a world-famous photographer, and this poster represents the history of accidents at Vermont Yankee. The other posters up above speak for themselves from Hiroshima to Harrisburg. People's concerns about nuclear power in the 70s had spawned a lot of groups. These two posters were from the group called Burlington Safe Energy Committee. Lynn Severance also did these posters.
This is a poster created for draft registration in 1980. If you recall, that was when registration began under the Reagan administration. And this is a very creative poster designed by Michael Billingsley and Margot Zalkenshore that shows the stock market report behind the bandaged heads of men who've been injured in the war. Down here is a poster talking about an event relating to Cambodia. Right around 79 and 80 in Burlington, there were two groups that were very active, one concerned about the hostages and Iran, the other about Cambodia. We were all trying to understand what was going on there. We brought several speakers to town to meetings that were very well attended. We raised Burlington Aid to Cambodia, raised something like $400 to send to Cambodia. This poster commemorates the Mother's Day peace pageant that happened in May of 1981. This was a marvelous event in Burlington where a number of performers came up from central Vermont with the program of Carol Duvenak and performed their play called Button, Button, A Dream of Nuclear War on the empty space between the Inn at the Mall and the Radisson Hotel. It was a wonderful day. A huge crowd came and witnessed this play with very large puppets. William Sloane Coffin was in it. A number of Burlingtonians performed, and it was quite a dynamic event.
We're really excited to have Jim Geyer's his very first dot chart that he ever drew. It's a lot of polka dots. Each dot represents all the megatonnage in World War II, including the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs. All those other dots, 60,000 of them, represent the combined megatonnage of the Soviets and the Americans in about the mid-1980s. This dot chart was made to graphically zap people with the information about how many bombs there are out there and how scary it all is. And Jim's dot chart, when he got Pat Leahy to take it to the Senate floor, it's been in books and flyers, and it's been all over the world. I'm sorry.
I've always loved this poster because it's such a pretty image of a very devastating fact, which is showing the devastation that can be caused by, in this case, one Trident submarine, one U.S. Trident submarine. If all of its warheads, of which there are 235 on each Trident submarine, if all of those warheads were to explode over the Soviet Union, and in addition, if a Soviet sub were to explode all of theirs over the United States, these are sort of very ominous Moby Dicks that, where you can see that just one submarine is able to totally devastate a whole nation. Each of these bombs is 100 kilotons, which is far stronger than Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs. So you can see that, what do we need any more for?
June 12, 1982 was one of the absolutely very largest undertakings the Peace Coalition had ever done. A week before the event, we had sort of a get-ready kind of festival with music and singing, and all these various singing artists donated their time. This poster show commemorates graphic artists, while we also had many musicians donate their time over history. I organized the buses in Burlington. There were 6 buses and 6 vans. The scary thing was that we had one bus filled about a week or 10 days before the event, and all the other buses filled within 1 week. It was pretty crazy. A unique thing that we did for this event was that we made 22 of these posters and put them inside the city buses. We had never done that before. It was an extra big experiment for us, and it was actually a blow-up of the actual ticket that we gave to people. Edward Bailey was our artist in 1982. distributed these various posters. This poster actually is from New York City, from the Mobilization for Survival. It wasn't really a Vermont poster, but it was very popular, so we decided to include it in the show. In 1983, this little unassuming poster represents another big event that happened. We had 500 people join hands around 2 city blocks on Mother's Day, May 8th in 1983. This event was a dream of Jack Mayer in Enosburg Falls, a pediatrician. He eventually, by the next year, got people ringing bells for peace for 1 hour from 12 to 1 in every single time zone around the whole planet. It was a very special idea that he had, and it's too bad it hasn't continued, but we did it for a number of years. In 1983 was again the Jobs for Peace and Jobs, Peace, and Freedom commemoration of Martin Luther King's I Had a Dream speech. And this is a locally produced poster, and again a poster from Mobilization for Survival, the national event in Washington, D.C.
Women's International League for Peace and Freedom created a number of placards, or actually plexiglass signs, that were in the Burlington International Airport. They had a subcommittee called Redirections, and they gathered a lot of money and hired artists, actually paid artists in many cases, to create this one placard for the nuclear freeze. Over here is another on the nuclear threat. And the third one that created quite a stir at Burlington International Airport is this placard relating to the Winooski 44. I could just read a part of it. International law forbids our country from interfering in the international affairs of Nicaragua. This law was reaffirmed in Burlington, Vermont on November 16, 1984, when a jury found 26 people not guilty for their sit-in in protest against U.S. policies in Central America, nonviolent civil disobedience, and American tradition that works. They had a lot of problems with the authorities at the Burlington International in hanging that sign, and in times it was taken down. They had to get it up again, but it did prevail. I saw it there, and I think it was one of the few ways in which we were able to advertise the wonderful accomplishment that happened by winning the trial of the Winooski 44.
1980s, the Growing Peace Coalition and its various related groups got involved in international events. Some people went with Red Puppet to London, England for a week for International Disarmament Week, and a busload of people went up to Montreal, Canada to participate in a Stop the Cruise and Pershing Missiles demonstration on October 22nd in 1983. The Dawn of the People was a film created about the Nicaragua Literacy Crusade, and also about that same time, Burlington became a sister city with Puerto Cabezas, Nicaragua.
1985 is the 40th anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. At that time, we took part in a tour sponsored by Mobilization for Survival that brought several Hibakusha and members of the Mobilization for Survival to Burlington. I myself went to Japan, Hiroshima, Nagasaki that summer. This is the poster that commemorates the 40th anniversary. This is actually the 39th, and this is the 41st. This was created by Anne Curlin, the doves, the cranes, and we had quite a big event in '86, although it rained and we had to come inside. The American Friends Service Committee has created a number of wonderful posters over the years and had a number of wonderful events that the posters commemorated. This poster was made by Sabre Field and commissioned by Dave McCauley, and it's about the Vermont Walk for Peace and Justice that went from Weston, Vermont up to Burlington. They made several other posters that were in this show.
Okay, this was a participating group, the Vermont Committee on Irish Human Rights, does an event each year, usually with Bernadette McAllister. Another participating organization with the Burlington Peace Coalition, or now Peace and Justice Coalition, is the Vermont Committee on Irish Human Rights. Each year, they usually bring Bernadette Devlin to speak about what is going on in Northern Ireland. And Coverley is the artist involved in these cases here. Last year's and this year's events. And our poster show is about 9 feet long. It's painted on metal, and it was on the side of a city bus. And again, the group that sponsored this poster was Redirections, a task force of will.
So what does this whole poster show mean, Wendy Coe and Robin Lloyd?
Well, this poster show represents a small portion of the posters that we have in our files. There were many more posters, some of them a lot more boring or not as graphically exciting to look at. Unfortunately, we didn't touch on gay and lesbian rights. We didn't touch on the Middle East. There were several areas of peace and justice concerns that we didn't touch on because City Hall has only a certain amount of space.
Well, we've gotten lots of feedback from people in City Hall who walk by these posters every day, and for many of them it reminds them of events that they took part in, and they were very glad to see them. They'd forgotten all the events that we had sponsored over the years, and this was a good reminder to them.
I think this poster show also, when we had the posters, and each individual poster is such a struggle to get them put up, but when you shrink wrap them and hang them all very evenly, it looks very impressive. And we did do a lot of things, and it should be impressive.
So come around again in 10 years, we'll have another one.